Hello, and welcome to our newscast about colonial Pennsylvania.
As a persecuted Quaker himself, Pennsylvania was a refuge and a haven for freedom. A colony was constructed with the sole purpose of tolerance and acceptance, resulting in a fine relationship with the natives, protests against slavery, and a diversity that included many other religions and nations. Pennsylvania was a land of progress, and it quickly escalated into a commercial trade center. William Penn and all the other Quakers facing discrimination in England based on that idea of religion.
Along with this, Pennsylvania's economy was extremely successful. There were many reasons why their economy was so successful, including diverse agriculture, profitable trade, and a surplus of natural resources. One particularly important reason that they had an immensely profitable trade with the Indians was because of their relationship with them. Philadelphia stands for City of Brotherly Love, and the whole country thrived economically, politically, and socially due to William Penn's belief that all religions should have the capacity to live in unity and peace. William Penn was by far the biggest influencer and the most important person when it came to the founding of Pennsylvania. William Penn's father, who was actually a big influencer in founding Pennsylvania, was actually the reason why Pennsylvania was named Pennsylvania. In 1682, when William Penn first came to the New World, he founded the proprietary colony of Pennsylvania. There, he made his cousin William Markham the governor and proposed the first frame of government. This document was then revised with input from the Assembly, and the second frame of government was formed. This would become Pennsylvania's first official frame of government. In the second frame of government, Penn created the Provincial Council and the General Assembly. The council members would be chosen by the current governor, but the representatives in the Assembly were elected. The General Assembly was a way to let the people have a say in the government. Those in the Assembly were the lower house of the legislature. They were in charge of approving or rejecting bills passed by the council, proposing amendments, and changing taxes. However, as a result of the English Revolution of 1688, Penn's control of his culinary was temporarily taken from him in 1692 to 1690. One of the earliest to request more power for the Assembly was David Lloyd. He was the Speaker of the Assembly and served as the first Attorney General for Pennsylvania. He led a popular party which wanted more powers for the Assembly and the people, some of which were given in Markham's frame of government, which was created in 1696. When Penn returned to Pennsylvania in December of 1699, he collaborated with the Assembly on a document titled the Charter of Privileges. This was a very important piece of writing as it gave the Assembly full legislative powers and allowed 3 Delaware counties to have their own separate legislature. The document stated many key concepts that were important to Pennsylvania, like having election for the legislature, as it states that free men in each respective county at the time and place of meeting for electing their representatives to serve in the Assembly. It also promised religious freedom for all, as it reads, because no people can be truly happy, though under the greatest enjoyment of civil liberties, if abridged of the freedom of their conscience as to their religious profession and worship. Though many of Penn's views and ideas which made it, you can see that his Quaker beliefs greatly influenced his ideals. During the colonial times, Penn and his heirs were proprietors and the governors from within Britain, but they would choose a deputy or lieutenant governor who would reside in Pennsylvania to carry out their wishes. Additionally, in 1725, Sir William Keith, the deputy governor at the time, said to the representatives in the General Assembly, "You that are the people's representatives, and the guardians of their liberties, the best counselors to any governor, and the proper judges of all public grievances." This shows that over time the Assembly became more and more important to the colonists in Pennsylvania. Over time, Penn's heirs, who strayed from some of his Quaker beliefs, would continue to have political differences with the Assembly, who remained mostly Quaker. Additionally, there would be a power struggle between the rights of the proprietors and the rights of the Assembly. These arguments would prepare the colonists for the Revolutionary War and what the United States government would eventually become.
Pennsylvania was a thriving colony in the 1700s in terms of economy. The agriculture in Pennsylvania was amazing, even compared to the other colonies. There was an abundant amount of natural resources that were easily available and allowed the development of many industries. The rivers in Pennsylvania were also great for economy. The river in Pennsylvania was a great form of transportation and also helped the inhabitants of Pennsylvania trade with the Indians. Pennsylvania was amazing in agriculture, from the first to the amazing livestock. Pennsylvania was an optimal location, especially when talking about Philadelphia. There were many very great points of interest in Pennsylvania that allowed some trade to happen. Philadelphia played a role in being the capital for a portion of the 18th century. It was the second most populated state in the country from the 1700s on. because it allows the colony to make money and even to trade during this time. Pennsylvania also had a lot of resources that were very, very necessary, especially when making a new colony. Pennsylvania excelled in many of the key economic areas that were needed to have a big, successful colony. Another important part of the economy in Pennsylvania was that there was no big conflicts with the Indians. Unlike some of the other colonies. In this primary source document by an inhabitant of Pennsylvania in the mid-1700s, it shows how jobs were so abundant compared to all of the other colonies that, quote-unquote, always can here get 3 times the wages for their labor they can in England or Wales. Their taxes are inconsiderable. The place is free for all persuasions. This shows that someone could earn as much as 3 times as much for basically the same work in Pennsylvania in the mid-1700s. It also proves how strong the economy was in Pennsylvania, which was why Pennsylvania was so successful.
He states, "In the first place, the country is now well inhabited by the Christians, who have great stocks and all sort of cattle that increase extraordinarily. Secondly, farther into the country is the principal place to trade with the Indians for all sorts of pelts, as skin and furs, and also fat venison, of whom people may purchase cheaper by 3 parts in 4 than they can with the city of Philadelphia." Thomas observed that the colonists had more than just agricultural goods. They also had cattle and stocks, which is extremely beneficial to the colonists because they can both trade the cattle and use it as a source of food. Something else that Thomas wrote was that the Pennsylvanians could trade with the Indians that lived in the area. Many other colonies were hostile towards the Indian, which made it much more difficult to trade. It was very beneficial that the colonists in Pennsylvania stayed friendly with the Indians, as it allowed them to have very profitable trade. Thomas also wrote, "They pay no tithes and their taxes are inconsiderable." He states yet another reason why Pennsylvania's economy was so successful. The colonists didn't pay tithes, which was 1/10 of annual earnings taken as a tax for support of the church, and they also paid barely any taxes, which really improved the economy. Overall, Pennsylvania's economy was extremely successful during the colonial times.
Okay, so in 1682, William Penn was granted the land between Maryland and New York due to the 16,000 euros which King Charles II owned to his father, Admiral Sir Penn. Persecuted by Anglicans, the Quakers faced a crucial time. Penn viewed Pennsylvania as a haven for Quakers and a holy experiment. Born in an Anglican family, Penn became a Quaker at the age of 22 and was expelled from Christ Church and Oxford for being a Quaker and was arrested multiple times. Taking advantage of the rough period in England, Penn made pamphlets to promote this land of religious liberty and cheap land. Attracting artisans, laborers, Germans, Dutch, Scot-Irish, Scandinavians, English, and enslaved Africans, Pennsylvania was a land of diversity. William Penn believed that people of all religions should live together in peace, which led to the undisturbed relationship that the colonists had with the natives, unlike many of the other colonies at the time. Although William Penn was granted all the land in Pennsylvania by the king, they did not want to grant or settle any part of it without first finding the claims of the Native Americans who lived there. Alliances and treaties also allowed for the pacifism and the long peace which accompanied the colony throughout its colonization. One of the treaties was established in 1682 and it stated that in exchange for foreign and other goods, Penn promised that he would deal with the Indians fairly and honestly. In a document written by Penn in 1683, he states, "The natives I shall consider in their persons, language, manners, religion, and government. For their persons they are generally tall, straight, well-built, and of singular proportions." Another document is a direct letter that Penn sent to the King of the Indians, in which he says, "I have sent my commissioners to you about to a league of the peace. We desire you to be kind to my people, and receive these presents and tokens which I have sent to you as a testimony of my goodwill to you, and my resolution to live justly, peaceably, and friendly with you. I am your friend." This stable relationship between the colonists and Indians allowed for a stable colony without war and periods of starvation. Edward Hicks was a Quaker preacher in Pennsylvania, and his currently famous paintings illustrate and evidence the peaceable kingdom of Pennsylvania. Despite Quaker opposition to slavery, about 4,000 slaves had been brought to Pennsylvania by 1730, most of them owned by English, Welsh, and Scotch-Irish colonists. However, in 1682, the first public protest against the institution of slavery led to Quakers in Germantown, Pennsylvania, to adopt resolutions against slavery. In 1780, Pennsylvania was the first state to get legislature to pass an act for gradual abolition. Pennsylvania had a huge diversity, made up of liberal, pacifist colonies. The peace allowed the colonies to thrive in other areas, and Philadelphia became a busy port and trade center, designed for an intellectual and commercial life. Because of this, the colony was tolerant and peaceful, allowing for its growth and development in many areas. A lot of these tolerant ideas came from William Penn himself, who is now ranked amongst the three heroes of American freedom due to his contribution to religious tolerance.
William Penn viewed Pennsylvania as a holy experiment, and indeed it was. It served as a refuge to the persecuted Quakers and as a meeting center for various religions and nations. With pillars of unity, peace, and freedom, and religious freedom, the colonists were able to build a solid economy and political structure. The stability can be credited to the fact that Pennsylvania did not encounter periods of starvation or wars with the natives, but also the fact that people had freedom and were motivated by peace. Additionally, the reason that the colonists never encountered starvation should be credited to the fact that Pennsylvania had so many natural resources and also such an ideal place to farm and trade for immense profit. Therefore, Pennsylvania was one of the most economically stable colonies back in the 1700s. With political values of self-government and a calling towards democracy, it is no surprise that many of Penn's ideas for Pennsylvania's government helped shape concepts for the future United States.